She was also expanding her great theme. Remember, okay, let me talk about great controversy here. So this building over here is representing two things. It represents two things. When you go to the GC, Pastor, you will only see a wall. There's no actual door. There's no 19th century chapel at the GC. But here, kinumbay natin yung dalawa. So this depicts the story in Lovett's Grove in March 14, 1858, when Ellen White attended the funeral of a young. Suddenly he was caught up into vision. And for 4 hours they waited. You know, the people waited. What happened? And then when she rose up, she was taken into a vision that would be called the Great Controversy vision. This is the first vision. The second vision was in Second Meeting House in Battle Creek in 1858, May 23. Almost a little 1.5 months apart. And what was this vision all about? All these visions were recorded in these 4 volumes of spiritual gifts. So, Pastor, who really theologized on the spirit of prophecy? Actually, it is Ellen White. It's really Ellen White that has deep. Because if you read this, especially in selected messages, if you read this, she was explaining about the theology of prophecy and visions, and how visions come about, how the Lord worked through the prophets. And so that was the first volume. And then she expanded it to spiritual prophecy, volume 1 to 4, and more expanded. Here you can see that she starts her chapters with I saw, I heard, I was instructed. But here she is more expanding it into a more, I would say, reaching out to a little bit to non-Adventist. Here, she was encouraging the church. But here, she is reaching out. But this one was made really for non-Adventist. Beginning with the Great Controversy in 1888, where she was in. And what were the contents of this? Where she went in Europe, she was able to write it. When she went to the Waldensian village, when she went to Italy, when she went to France, Germany, she was writing the reformers from experiences that she had had. One time when she was in Waldensian village, she can even say, oh, there's something somewhere here. She was looking for some place and it was there. So be to the place as if she was there personally at that, that place happened. That was quite amazing. Okay, so the Great Controversy, and then later, I think Patriarchs and Prophets, Acts of the Apostles, Desire of Ages, Acts of the Apostles, and then Prophets and Kings. By the way, in Patriarchs and Prophets, the introduction is by Uriah Smith, is explaining the gift of prophecy. So if you want to have the most comprehensive understanding of Seventh-day Adventists about prophetic gift, this is the introduction is the best, okay? If you want to understand that. So these are the corpuses of Ellen White, and when she was in, let me explain. Why do we put it prominent? Because this was the product of a great disappointment, if we sometimes think. But Ellen White received a vision, I think in 1851, explaining that this chart is actually guided and inspired by God. Not one dot from here shall be changed without God's inspiration. Now, the question is, why was it 1843? If God guided, then why was it? Because God's inspiration works incarnately, which means that, okay, God gives understanding, but human capacity sometimes do not fully understand. Like for example, the disappointments on the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Why did allow the disciples to misinterpret his first coming? And in the same way, why would God allow the end of the 2,300 days to be wrong? In the middle of the 70-week prophecy to be wrong. God allows human error so that people would be dependent on God and the inspiration that comes from the Holy Spirit. So I don't want you to miss that, Mark. The humanity of human beings does not limit God of His will. Okay, even taken advantage by God. So let's go to Australia. By the way, this picture over here, Ellen White said that this is the closest resemblance of Jesus Christ. And what is this picture all about? It goes back to the empire, the Roman Empire, Tiberius, Caesar. This painting actually it is engraving, I think, on a pendant, I think. So let's go to Australia. Why is Australia very important? Because according to the vision, we must go to Europe, and then from Europe they expanded to Australia. S.N. Haskell asked Ellen White to go to Australia. There are many rumors that Ellen White went to Australia. Maybe half the truth, but I would say yes. During that time, Ellen White leadership was not comfortable with the prophets around. And so when the Jar Conference decided to send Ellen White, both in good intentions and some are also taking advantage so that the prophets would be silenced. But at the same time, he really was concerned of Australia. So he talks to Ellen White and said, you must give character to our work in Australia. And during that time when Ellen White arrived in Australia, there were only 300 Adventist members. So which means that it was really a beginning work. But when Ellen White was sent to Australia, at age what? At age 64, she complained, Pastor, that she is already complaining with some pains, that she doesn't want to go. And besides, she is writing the life of Jesus Christ. But anyhow, she said, what do you mean? Have you not come to Australia because you felt that it was your duty to go where the conference judged it best for you to go? Because she was asking from God visions or any indication that the Lord really wants her to go, but the Lord was silent. The Lord wants her to decide for herself whether she would go there, surrender, or submit to the Jar Conference. And so, of course, as her practice, she submitted, but not full-heartedly, with hesitations, but is fully surrendered and obedient. Was it fruitful? Yes, it was fruitful, because when she was sent there, she could not fully understand. In fact, the moment she was sent there, there are only about 3 weeks since she went there. She suffered pain from head to toe for 8 long months. For 8 long months. And she could not even move. And the only part of her body that doesn't have pain was her right hand. And during that time, she was writing Steps to Christ.
Amen.
She arrived in 1892. She arrived in 1891. 1892, she finished Steps to Christ. Then she began to write the life of Christ. By the way, the life of Christ was as thick as this. And they have to divide it. The publishing house cannot allow that as thick as this. So you have to divide it. So they divided it to Desire of Ages, of Christ Object Lesson, and Thoughts from the Mount of Blessing. By the way, all of this started from when Ellen White was writing Confrontation. And Confrontation is Matthew chapter 4. And then Matthew chapter 4, then Thoughts from the Mount of Blessing in Matthew chapter 5, 6, 7, 8. And then Christ Object Lesson is all about the parables, and then the life of Jesus. And then it was extended in 1905 when she wrote Ministry of Healing. But they took up all religious jargons in order to reach out to hospitals. Okay, of Ellen White's going to Australia. Let's go here before we go there. In 1901, when Ellen White ended up her missionary, by the way, she was 64 years old when she was sent to Australia. So what do you think was her age when she went to the US back? Most probably 74. She was already 74 when she stood up during the Jar Conference session. And what did she stand up for? Reorganization. Because she was, sometimes they thought that if Ellen White would be in Australia, the prophet would be silenced. No, she was not silent. Became even more influential. Why? Because she was in the battlefield. And when she was in the battlefield was quite successful. First, Australia began to have a structure that is different from the whole world. What was that? They call it the Union District. They call it Union District. District means these are local organization of conferences. So from that, the first president was her son, Willie White, and later A.G. Daniels. And when the reorganization was made, A.G. Daniels became the president, the longest serving president of the JAR conference. So what happens? Whatever happens in Australia becomes the pattern for the whole world. Okay, what happened? Of course, they formed unions and later they formed divisions. And the first division was Asiatic division. Before, we have General Conference US, we have General Conference Europe. But after this, after the fast growth, by the way, without this could not happen. Remember, the Foreign Mission Board met 11 times in slightly more than a month of time, with the first 4 meetings taking place between April 24 to 28. But this is very influential. Pastor, this is our missionary focus. Okay, this conference will be sending across the world, and this will become the explosion of missions. Before, Abraham LaRue went as a self-supporting, and then Aldo was sent by Michigan as soon as he was. By the way, he was ordained 1 week after his baptism. And then, of course, Anderson baptized the first converts of Abraham LaRue. So all of these are missionaries from different conferences. But for the first time, the JAR conference will be sending official missionaries sent by the money of the JAR conference, not by the conference. And then Robert Caldwell was sent by Australia. But since here, we will be organizing the Asiatic division. So that is Asiatic division. I'll not explain yet Asiatic division. Let me explain a little. Asiatic division is China, India, Japan, Korea, Malay, Peninsula, Philippines, and Singapore during that time. Okay? So this is now the structures. These are the representations. A.J. Daniel Jose. Do you recognize her? This is Petra Thunheim. Okay, the first missionary to Indonesia, Monsoon and Tisdale. Okay, so let me explain first the Philippines. Let's go to the Philippines first before we go there. Okay. Jen, nasundo mo na? Okay, the story of the Philippines. Many of us would always begin our story of the Philippines at what? There are more missionaries that was sent. Okay? Missionaries that was sent. After him, Floyd Ashmo was sent to Panay. Okay, in Panay. By the way, Ashmo is a convert of Luther Warren. Remember the name? Warren Harry Fenner. Yeah. And most probably also volunteer. And at age 21, he became a canvasser in the islands of Panay. And then later, in 1911, he was sent there. Later, Adams came. By the way, Adams became reliever for Finster for quite some time. And it was between Adam and Manalo that there was animosity among the two of them, that Manalo, went out of the church. It was Adams. He was not very experienced. Manalo is a very experienced pastor from different denomination, and he's quite young. And during that time, Finster was in furlough for the U.S. Furlough because he was sick. But during that time, what did he accomplish? First, he was able to get the printing press, and also was able to get Fausto Hornada in Hawaii to go to Iloilo to preach. And the first converts were in Panay. This one, the first converts of Panay in Iloilo, in Haro. And then Carlos Fatibert was also sent. He was able to establish medical pioneering work in Argao, and later he visited Lanao while he was sick. He needed to stay there, and then he was able to convert some people also in Misamis. So this is the first mission. This is the Philippine mission. Before it becomes a union, it is a Philippine mission. And from Philippine mission, the branch pastor was Panayan. And then Cebuan, Panayan Cebuan mission. Okay, Panayan. Then Panayan separated to become West Visayan Conference. Okay, West Visayan Conference. After that, after these two, we were able to establish, of course, the Ilocano mission. And then after Ilocano mission, we have the Central Southern Luzon mission conference. By the way, Finster was the president of this conference, while he is also the president of the Philippine Union Mission. At the same time. At the same time. So in a span of first baptism of 1911, from 1911, a span of 6 years, from zero baptism, the Philippines became Philippine Union Conference. 6 years.
PUC.
And this one, when this was installed in 1916, when A.G. Daniels came, this becomes the biggest conference in the world. The biggest conference in the world. Okay, so the Philippines now becomes the explosion of mission across the world. Okay, so these are our first Filipino representations. These are our Filipino pastors. Okay, so what were the approach? What were the missionary approach that we used? According to Ellen White, the gospel ministry, medical missionary work, and our publications are God's agencies. One is not to supersede the other. So there were balance of work in the Philippines at the same time. While language work was booming, like Tagalog mission, and then later the Tagalog mission becomes Philippine mission. Of course, Tagalog continues, Central Luzon, and then Ilocano mission by Babiano Panes. We have Pampanga mission, and then we also have Mindanao mission, Panayan mission, and Cebuan mission, all at the same time, with different missionaries there. We also have medical missionary work. This is our Manila Sanitarium. This is in Malate, the first dispensary in Malate. And then Argao. Okay, this is Argao. I think Argao came first before Sanitarium. Okay, this came first before Sanitarium. And then we have Iligan Dispensary in 1947, and then also in Northern Luzon, Northern Luzon medical work. Now, what about our publishing work? Our publishing began in 1995-96. But let me bring you back to 1896.
1896.
In 1896, the Philippines has been again and again published and republished again and again and again in Review and Herald, in Signs of the Times, and in Sentinel. Why? Because Philippines has been talked about in Congress and the Senate of the America. And what caused the talk? Because if America would win against Spain over Cuba and Puerto Rico, what will happen to the Philippines? Philippines will be an automatic trophy. So in 1898, remember, 1898, what happened? The America bought the Philippines $100 million in the Treaty of Paris. Now, in 1896, also, the Congress and the Senate decided that they would take the, in 1898, but in 1896, you know, in Senate and in Congress and also in the Review and Herald, they constantly talk about, do you know that? Review and Herald would talk about Jose Rizal. And even Finster, all other missionaries would always talk about Jose Rizal. They would always refer almost every article that they have. So he's quite popular even during 1896 in our review. Now, 1899, Monsoon requested the mission board to send him as a missionary to the Philippines. But since he can talk Malay, he was not sent. Instead, he was sent to Indonesia. But their first church will be built as the first church in the Philippines, 1911, 1912. Okay? And then there are already doctors, Adventist doctors in the Philippines during this time, but they are under the U.S. Army. Okay, there are nurses, there are canvassers, there are even sales in the Philippines even before Erwin came to the Philippines. Erwin came because of all these activities. So Erwin, the president of Australasian Union Mission or Conference, would go to Manila, and he would stay 8 days and talking to Governor General Luke Wright. And Governor General said, by the way, I wrote an article in SSD website. It's the website about the I will go missionary. Now, he said, why don't you put your church here? I know that you are very diligent people. So then he went to the Joint Conference, and in the Joint Conference, the Americans, California, decided to send a doctor. But the Australians said, why would they send America? No, Australia must go. They said, they're getting their meat in Australia. Now, why can't they get their spiritual meat from Australia too? So they sent an Australian, a newly graduate from Australasian Missionary College. He already canvassed in Singapore, in Thailand, in Malaysia. Now, he's about to begin his work. When he arrived here in the Philippines, no one was there to, welcome him because he is alone. He does not even know the language. And then, after him, someone was sent by the name of James McElhaney, the president of the Joint Conference in 1936. I think two consecutive. And then, after that, is in 1908, the apostle to the Philippines. This is Finster, Louis Finster. And then after 3.5 years of cottage meeting, we have the first converts and the charter member in Santa Ana. And then from that, he began to disciple local people because there was no missionary yet. There was no other missionary but him. So he discipled, and the first converts of this is the Malolos, Bulacan. So our first Filipino is Babiano Panes, we have Emilio Manalaysay, Felix Manalo, and Leon Roda. And you know the rest of the story, what happened to Felix Manalo. In 1914, we established the building, the first established building. This one is here, okay? In 1908, they moved to Ermita in Bagong Bayan. Okay, 1908 with Finster. And then 1914, they established, they moved from this place, okay? This is the first place, second place, third place. Now this is in Ermita, in Hidalgo now, Vermont. And then when Porter visited the Philippines and saw the explosion of work in the Philippines, they bought a land in Donada in Malate, now Pasay, the current place. What began here? First, the mission work began, then the medical mission work began, and the publishing work began, all in one place, and the education work also began. All in one place. Four works began in one place. That's why we call it the Philippine Publishing House, because it's just a house. It's just a house. Usually we call it Review and Herald Association, Publishing Association. We don't call it a house, but here we call it a house because it's originally just a house. So this is the training center for pastors and corporators at the same time, the printing press, and also the educational system of the Seventh Day Adventists, all in one place. By the way, this is the Manila biggest church during this time in 1916 during that conference. Okay, so let's go back to our wall. I think I can do this very fast. So you know Porter, remember Porter? During that time, India and Australia was combined with us, but later, remember Chrysler Pastor? I don't know if you're familiar with his name. He was the secretary of Ellen White until she died. And then later she was sent to China and in Asiatic Division to look at the membership and the growth of missions. And then after that, we become Eastern Asian Division. I think Australia and India was taken away from us. Then our headquarters will be in Shanghai. So this is in Shanghai, and then the executive committee, the Philippine Union Mission began. Now from this we will move to become Far Eastern Division. Then we will move our division in Singapore. But before Singapore, Pastor, constantly the division would always go back to Manila. Manila and Baguio. And during the 4 years of war, Manila and Baguio becomes the division. Until finally, the division will be here. So these are the movement. Now, this is the wartime. Okay, I will not explain the war. Quite chaotic. Theological seminaries, we began to have our theological seminaries in PUC, and then later we would acquire, from Marcos, we would acquire status of international school. We call it AIAS, Adventist International Studies, and then from that we will become Asia Pacific Division for 2 years. 2 years. Asia Pacific Division. And then after 2 years, we will be divided into 2, Southern and Northern Asia Pacific Division. Okay? So, and then 1,000 missionary would begin in 1994, where, was it 92? Yeah, 91, 1,000 missionary. My wife will be sent as a missionary 6 batch in 1994. My wife also is a missionary. And then Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Sri Lanka will be added to Southern Asia Pacific Division. SSD will be moved temporarily to AIAS, and then after 18 months of construction, we will move here. By the way, did you see the arc here? What is familiar to this arc is the same arc pattern in the Singapore. So you can see that we made this also 3 arc as a representation of the symbol of Southern Asia Pacific Division. And during that time, PAMAS also will start during the time of Pastor Gulfan. Pastor Gulfan, I think, is one of the longest serving president over a span of 13 years. Okay? And then Pastor Asoy only for maybe 6 months. And then Pastor Samuel So, and then Pastor Kaderma. Under Pastor Samuel So, AWR will start. Under Pastor Kaderma, we will open the Philippine Publishing House, and then we will open the Adventist Heritage Center, and later our E.G. White Center, then later our Adventist Heritage Village in the future. So that's the summary of it all. Do you have any question? Okay. So ito yung Indonesia. This is Waldo. The first convert is Emmanuel Sirigar from Bataklan. Was it? People who eat people, cannibal. Cannibal people. And then they would put up school. School is their pastor. Their strategy is school. Even now, they're very powerful in schools. And then Tisdale would come, but he would lose his son. And by losing his son, he would also lose his wife, because the wife would be mentally ill. And then he would go back to Australia. Then Petra Thunheim will take over, a divorcee who became a Seventh-day Adventist, and a colporteur, can speak 7 languages. Dutch woman will become the first historical woman mission president in the history of the Seventh-day Adventist Church in Australia. But that is her. But while she was in Java, she would contract disease. And then from that disease, she would die in the middle of Hong Kong and Java. She would die in Singapore and would be buried in Singapore. Her Bible is still at the wall of the Petra Thunheim Memorial Church. Okay? And then Samuel Rantong will be baptized during the time of the evangelism of Emmanuel Sirigar, when Munson would go back in 1911. And then Samuel Rantong will start the work in the Eastern Indonesia area. Okay. In Singapore, who will begin the work there? Griffiths. Griffiths also begins the work in Myanmar. But Robert Caldwell, again, the same name. Robert Caldwell will be the canvasser. And then, of course, Parkin. Okay, the first converts will be this Baba family. And this will be the first church. The printing press. By the way, from Indonesia, they moved here for 5 years. The printing press. And then later, they moved again back to Indonesia to become IPH, or Indonesia Publishing House. So that is the history, and this is the Penang Hospital. Penang Hospital. Myanmar. Okay, so it will begin with Ellen Myers. Ellen Myers will, the Myers will convert, and Jones will convert, and then A.G. Watson. These are the canvassers, and then they would convert May. We call it May is the sister of Maung Maung, but Maung Maung will become the first local minister of Myanmar, and then Herbert Vutao will Bible study Maung Maung, and then they will begin the work in Myanmar. But you know, civil war, it will slow the work in Myanmar. What about Thailand? Thailand again began with Robert Caldwell, and then the Griffiths, again Jones again is there, long way, okay, until this is the first converts, first missionary. This will be a mission station, our first clinic, okay, this is the same, this one and this one are the same. And then we have our hospitals. Our best approach in Thailand is hospitals. So we have several hospitals in Thailand too. Now this one will be very, very slow. Only now that they are opening, after the civil war. Only now that they are opening. All of them are communist countries. Bulag ang bahay na men and women are separated from each other. And this, have I explained to you about this? This picture was taken by a stubborn man who took a picture without permission at the balcony of the Dang Tabernacle. And you know, pictures before are very obvious. If you take a picture, boom! And everyone was astounded. So he was rebuked and was, ousted out of the church. But he was able to take at least one picture from the pulpit. Okay? So his stubbornness has a usefulness. Now, actually, I have this television because we have some, shows, especially as we explain the painting over there. It is well explained, but it's not yet installed. Okay, television. Okay, picture na rin. Okay. We are the church members. Okay, holy natin. Picture taker. Okay.
Ikaw di idol ka?
So what do you think about the center?
Wow, really nice. Excellent.
So very nice. I wish I can pastor a church like this. You want to preach in January? I want the church small like this. And I know this one sits here, the other one there.
Okay. That's it.
Really amazing.
This is the icon of heritage.
Oh, okay.
Actually, butangan ako ni ko sa kuan. There's no fear of the future. Butangan og kining kuan. Acrylic ba? Acrylic. Nothing to fear of the future.
Press.
Taga ikong picture ha.
Sige, ready? 1, 2, 3. Again, 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Nice, thank you.
Wala pa isa rin. Wala pa rin.
Official.
The most posted
Ready,
camera.
1, 2, 3. Again, 1,
Sige, hatag na ko mo.
Okay.
Siya, diha.
Magbaktas na lang may para exercise. Okay.
Ako na yung kibutan ako yung